Hello and welcome back to Warcraft Daily for today, the 3rd of March 2014. So in today's news, well, we have two main things. First of all, there was a recent interview about Warlords of Draenor with the Yogscast, so I will cover the various points that were covered in that. And then finally, we just have some tweets from Celestalin and Watcher. Actually, some rather interesting tweets that cover up one or two good things, and then I guess I may as well just do some viewer Q&A if we have time at the end. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, in the spirit of moving forward, let's jump right into the recent interview with the Yogscast. And first of all, the major topic that I think most of us care about the most, and that's Garrisons. So first of all, they said that Garrisons will be giving us access to little snippets of other professions without making people who have those professions useless. So I'm guessing what this means is you get, like, the kind of the light version of another profession. Now, exactly what that means, I have absolutely no idea. Of course, I don't think that you should be able to, say, make jewel crafting gems in your garrison. I don't think that would be fair. But I think little snippets of each one would be nice. Maybe you would only be able to use or create personal items, so if there was a jewel crafter in your garrison, maybe you make subpar quality gems that you can only use on yourself, or maybe just subpar quality gems anyway. Somethif like that. If you were to take enchanting, maybe there's one or two personal enchantments that you can use, but honestly, I think that they have a bit of a risk of giving people too much in terms of access to other professions. If they give too much, first of all, it's got a very destabilizing effect on the economy, and it takes out the meaning of having one of those other professions. But then also, just it kind of gets confusing by having such a cut down version of the game's 10 or whatever professions. But overall, though, if they do manage to pull this off right, giving us a little snippet, a bit of flavor from all those other professions should be really cool. I'd especially like it if you could get some, just like kind of nice little cosmetic-y thing, so if you leveled up, say, your enchanter NPC, then he or she would be able to make a cool enchantment or something. But yeah, they just need to be very sure to segregate it from the mainline profession and just make sure that they don't marginalize it, and that like they have said that's their intention, so overall, I think a very good thing, actually. Then they also said that the mounts in your garrison stable will be the mounts that you actually own, and they're going to base what mounts are in the stable on the ones that you use the most. So I think that's actually really nice. It'll add a little bit of flavor, and also just that personal touch. The world, well, in this case, a part of the game world, will actually reflect your own play habits, which I think is definitely a very good way of doing it, and the more the game can reflect that, the better, in terms of immersion, and in terms of, I don't know, just things kind of feeling nice. Then, yeah, the other thing that they said is the Garrisons have got a new NPC AI system, which allows them to act in a little bit of a less scripted way. The specific example that Ian Hazzikostas gave was the blacksmith who could wake up, go to work at his forge, get thirsty, then have a break, go to the tavern, then after that, go back, do some work, and go to the barracks to sleep. And, I mean, I think that's okay, and actually, as it turned out, this improved AI was necessary because the team are allowing players, of course, to place the buildings in the garrison no matter where they want, or yeah, wherever they want, so it would be impossible to just pre-script all these NPC interactions. So that's cool, right? They can get these NPCs to move around, things like that. But what really matters is, well, how do they actually make that a viable gameplay thing? Because, okay, aesthetics are nice, and just having something looking pretty is fine, but sometimes if things look pretty, then they end up just being shallow with no depth. One of the largest problems with MMOs is how they feel very static and boring, and sure, it's cool if your blacksmith can, you know, get up, go to work, go to the tavern and things like that, but is there a way of getting that to add any gameplay into the game? That's what I really want to know. Do they have any plans for actually bringing this system into something proper and using just enhanced AI for NPCs in general? I think there could be some really cool stuff with interacting with your followers and going a little, when I say raid, I don't mean an actual raid, but, you know, going and attacking something, like an enemy camp, that kind of thing. I think there's definitely room to use this AI in a way that could improve gameplay, because that's my concern, is that it just won't be used to improve gameplay that much. Then Ian Hazzikostas also said that, I should probably just say Ian, but I like saying Hazzikostas, it's a really cool surname. Anyway, so he said that this system actually might be used in the future with NPCs that are in cities. That of course makes sense. And one thing that's probably worth saying is, of course, the more NPCs that are like this, the more of a load it has on servers and that kind of thing, but because that load is on servers, none of this AI will bring down any older computers or anything like that, which is totally cool. And yeah, overall, nice little system. I just hope they actually do something well with it. Okay, so next, he said that the location of the buildings within your garrison is mostly a personal choice, because the gameplay element of Garrisons is selecting which buildings you want to have in your limited plots, not where you place the individual buildings. And I think that's fair enough, but maybe they could have done some cool things with placement. I guess if they ever were to have a mechanic with, say, I don't know, an enemy, like, army or raiding party attacking your place, then maybe it would be cool to nearly play kind of like building, you know, it's what StarCraft 2 players call Sim City, where you structure the internal sort of affairs of your base so that they make sense from a defensive perspective. So maybe your barracks is up near the front or something like that. I think it would be kind of cool. You know what, now that I think about it, they could probably have some cool little mini game with defending and attack. Hell, they could even incorporate in some tower defense elements. I was actually playing, I think it was Gears of War Liberation with a friend of mine. Funny, not really the best game narratively, but the gameplay is solid enough for a console shooter. I mean, I don't know, it controlled pretty badly because I'm used to PC. But anyway, the main point that I'm going with here is that they had this pretty cool system of, like, you could have limited tower defense options and little things where you could tell an NPC to go here or build a tower over there, and then you were actually still defending your base from the perspective of running around with your character and a gun. Well, maybe it would be cool if there was one of these garrison attack scenarios where perhaps you can place a tower somewhere, and that will have a gameplay effect when you're actually trying to fight off the enemy, or you can command some of your followers to go and hold a certain area, that kind of thing. I think it could actually be really cool. There's been one or two fun little times in World of Warcraft for me when I'm actually in combat with NPCs, and when those NPCs actually interact with the player, it can be kind of interesting, you know, like those times where you maybe kite a mob into a bunch of friendly NPCs and they kill the mob for you. And okay, it doesn't make much sense in the game's current gameplay, but if they had a way of making that matter, I think it could be rather interesting. Okay, so next he said that the team is aware of the problem with the Missa Pandaria farm, really, and just the various issues that it had, and they don't want players to feel the need to have garrisons on their alts just to funnel resources to their main. And that was, I guess it's a problem with the farm, but it's one of those things where really having that fun farm gameplay nearly facilitated having this problem, and it would be hard to get around it without arbitrarily making things soulbound. So I'm not exactly sure how they will do that. But in general, I think, yeah, they don't want to make it so it feels necessary for your main character's progression to have 10 different garrisons on all your alts that all funnel things to your main so that your main can get gear faster or something. They don't want to do that. I think garrisons should be relatively segregated to the character in which they're on, but one or two little cross benefits would be nice. Just, balance it right, the usual kind of deal. Next, he said that players will want to check in with a garrison pretty much once per play session, maybe when they log in or out, and it won't be a place to idle in like what cities currently are, because there's no auction house or bank or anything in your garrison. So really it's the sort of thing you'll just pop into, have a bit of a check-up, and then you'll leave again. And the nice thing is that when he says once per play session, well, that's actually decided by you. You can send your followers off on a raid, in which case they'll be gone for a few days. Well, that's fine. You won't have to check in your garrison all the time if that's the case, but maybe you can send them off on a quest which only takes half an hour or an hour. Then you maybe want to check in your garrison more and more. I'm not exactly sure how things will work with, say, a minor NPC, and maybe you have to go every day to your garrison and collect the ore that they've mined. I'm not too sure how that works, but overall, it's just it's like an extra thing you can go in and mess about with when you log in, which honestly is a good thing because it's more gameplay. Okay, so next, on the topic of raiding, he said that there are no plans for Mythic-only bosses in the patch 6.0 raids, but there will of course be some Mythic-only elements to fights, similar to the extra phase on Heroic Garrosh. Mythic bosses will continue to be added in the game when they make sense. And on the topic of Mythic bosses, specifically ones that don't work well, Raden, he actually said that this boss wasn't publicly tested to ensure that it remained a surprise. And that was good in one hand, but the other problem is that Ian actually was not able to spend as much time as he would have liked watching the various internal test sessions, which resulted in a few loopholes in the fight when it was made live, and therefore the fight was actually quite a bit easier than intended. So that's definitely unfortunate the way that panned out, but still, it doesn't mean that the idea of a mythic-only boss is worth abandoning. I think there can be a really fun race there with this extra hard boss, which is just designed to be incredibly difficult from the ground up. I think that can work out really well. Okay, so next, and finally on the topic of questing and that kind of thing, and well, more specifically actually the introduction quest to Warlords, he said that the players will all be having a similar starting experience in Warlords of Draenor, and that this experience will take place before the gameplay that was shown in all the different recent videos. If you want to see those videos, just go back to any of my Warlords of Draenor videos, look in the description, you'll see links to the websites in which they were originally posted, and they're all like Korean websites, so have Google Translate handy. And then next, he said that the normal experience for the majority of players is going to take place at the Dark Portal, in which you go through the portal, you stop the impending Iron Horde invasion, and while you aren't able to defeat them, you do stop the imminent threat, which then of course just opens the game up for all the gameplay of the main expansion's leveling up process. And then that actually characters which are boosted up to level 90 will have a slightly different experience, with most of the skills removed from their bars, and then them just sort of slowly getting abilities unlocked as they play. So, a little bit of a different experience. One interesting thing is that the level 90 boost gear that was leaked in MMO Champion, or not leaked, well, data mined I guess on WoW had actually, not MMO Champion, but anyway, it was actually all Mists of Pandaria themed. I did a video on it just for the sake of coverage, and also because people asked, and that definitely makes you think that this level 90 boost will be in Pandaria, whereas what they've said here seems to suggest that it's a slightly altered version of getting yourself boosted in to Warlords of Draenor, so I'm not too sure how that'll pan out. I think from a main gameplay perspective, they just want to leave Pandaria behind, actually. That's what I would do if I were Blizzard, in terms of, you know, people just buying a 90 boost to get back into the game. So I'm not too sure how that will pan out. Alright, so finally he said that the team is aware that the timeline for some older content is a little bit inconsistent, but updating the Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King content would take away from the Warlords of Draenor development. Fair enough, I guess. It's funny how it all worked out, really. I'd have been happier if they had have just revamped the old zones in a way that wasn't like Cataclysm, so that those old zones still would have taken place before Burning Crusade, but they just would have been revamped and actually had some of those really nice, kind of flavoursome, unique stories that they used to have, just really played out nicely and well. But no, instead everything else, you know, everything was just made Twilight's Hammer, Deathwing, stuff like that. Blech. Not really as interesting, in my opinion, as some of the older zone stories, so it's a little bit of a pity that happened. And then in terms of other things, really, I don't think they should go back and revamp Burning Crusade and Wrath. Well, personally, I think Wrath is the best leveling experience they've had in the game, bar a few zones and some quest lines. I think that if you actually had the Wrath quality of story quests and then that open-endedness, with just some of the modern mechanics they have now, that it would be better overall. But come on, just think of things like the initial foray into Icecrown Citadel with Tyrion, and then Dragonblight and some elements of the Howling Fjord, and those really cool moments, they just don't seem to happen as much anymore. So yeah, I wouldn't like Wrath or Burning Crusade to be revamped too much, because I actually kind of enjoyed them both a little bit. Anyway, so finally, let's just cover up some tweets. First, we have Celestalin, who said that Enhancement currently has so many different attacks that none of them feel strong or impressive. I think that's indicative of a wider problem. This was Enhancement Shamans in, specific. But that is another thing, that really when a class just has so many different attacks that aren't really unique enough from each other, that they just kind of all feel baseline and you're just sitting there mashing buttons, but there's no cool thing. You know, like when you're a warrior, you hit execute and an awesome thing happens, or just similar things like that. So I think actually, you know what, that's a fair enough criticism, and that idea can definitely be sort of carried over to some other classes, which perhaps just don't feel as unique with all their different attacks. I know as a hunter sometimes it's annoying where the only differences between the hunter specs are one or two abilities. It's rather unfortunate, really. Hell, like Cobra Shot and Steady Shot are nearly the same thing, so ugh, it's problems. Okay, so finally, then Celestialin said that in Warlords of Draenor, bosses will still be able to parry from the front, so that there is definitely an incentive to get yourself behind the boss. Now, later on, Watcher did point out that the same bosses, or not the same bosses, sorry, in some cases, bosses will not parry, just for the sake of it making sense. Overall, that's pretty good, and they still do want to have that incentive for being behind a boss, because that A, makes complete sense when you think about it, and B, provides just a little bit more gameplay in there for melee players. And I guess maybe for ranged, but I don't know, you can't parry a ranged. Can you parry a ranged attack? No, you can't. I don't think I've ever been parried. Well, now that I'm questioning myself, let's move on to the tweets from Watcher himself. First of all, he said that they neglected flight points in Burning Crusade onwards, well, actually onwards from Burning Crusade, and that they will not make that mistake again in Warlords of Draenor. Sure thing, I hope you carry forth with that, because the one way that people will be able to deal with the no flying till 6.1 is if flight points are really good, so hopefully they will be. Then next, the Kor'kron Dark Shaman set will still be available in Warlords of Draenor, so we confirm that, which is nice. And actually, one thing I should probably just mention about the flight points post BC, I think that when flying was introduced into the old world, or not flying, when the original flight points in the game were made, they had to weave around parts of the world that weren't designed to be viewed from an overhead angle. Now that you can easily do that, I think setting up direct flight points should be a lot easier. Now that of course means that really there's no excuse for some of the things that we saw in, say, Cataclysm or Wrath of the Lich King. I've seen some really silly ones in Wrath of the Lich King where you're literally going double the distance you need to. So that's the thing. Anyway, then next up, he said that the item level reward, and this is very good news actually, the item level reward of the challenge mode daily will increase from tier to tier, since challenge modes will not get easier over time. So it's still going to be this baseline difficulty that's constantly just remaining the same no matter what gear you have. Yet the piece of gear that you'll actually get from the daily quest for challenge modes will be competitive with the current sort of item levels in the game. I think that's really nice. It's the closest we're going to get to Mythic Dungeons, and I think that it's a very good way of doing things. So overall, props to you, Blizzard. And then finally, he said that daily quests will exist in various forms, but they will not be the backbone of outdoor endgame content like they were in Mists of Pandaria, and I think that is definitely some excellent news there. Anyway, that is it for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. First of all, if you'd like to support the channel, you can check out my Patreon page, where we are certainly ramping up to be able to get some fancy tech upgrades, mainly soundproofing foam. It's funny, being a YouTuber, it's like the only profession of person that would get excited by special foam. So yeah, special foam. Then also there's my various social media links and that kind of thing that are floating about in the linky majigger of this video. So that's it for today, and I will see you tomorrow.